We are joined back with Nuriel, Brigadier General and expert on counterterrorism. Are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Nuriel, for staying with us throughout this broadcast. We just spoke to our political analyst in Paris, Christian Mollard, who said that the administration is saying, prepare for the worst. How does a country deal with the situation being on edge as a counterterrorism expert? What do you think?
I think that the government of France has to decide, and it's a very simple decision, even though the implementation would take time. They need to decide what comes first, human rights or the right to live. I belong to those who believe that at that stage, in this time of the world, the right to live is more important than the human rights. Most of us do not understand that we already gave up most of our privacy by Google, by our third-generation cell phone, by our credit card, and so far and so on. We need to give up a little bit more just to make sure that we can provide more security and more safety to our people. This is a crucial issue. I believe that sooner or later, most of the government in Europe would understand it. They will take the right decisions, and then we will start a long process which slowly implement better security and better safety to the citizens because they deserve it. I would like to comment on something that I've heard in your last panel. I don't think that France is a better target than any other places. I believe that ISIS is attacking whenever he can and wherever he can. So the next place can be any other state in Europe, can be even the United States. If you take the scenario that took place last night in Nice, it's very easy to conduct everywhere.
And for some reason, France is still a more vulnerable target for some reason, and the symbolic timing of having it on, but still it could happen everywhere, but France does seem to be pointed out.
I agree that somehow it's easier for them to operate in France, but I believe that ISIS will not hesitate to do it all over. And somehow we are trying to look for a very specific reason why this person did it, and to look into a very specific motivation he had. We need to say it loud and clear, and I'm not saying it because I'm an Israeli. I'm saying it because this is the reality. The friction among the Muslim world affected all of us. And the fact that the Sunnis and the Shiite are fighting among themselves, unfortunately, affected and will affect the world for the next, if you ask me, a decade or so. Therefore, we need to be more keen and more accurate by preventing any potential. And I'll give you an example related to what happened last night. I don't know the details, but how many times someone hire a truck without being asking, why do you need it? Looking a little bit for your background and see who you are. And I think that small steps like that, slowly will build up the ability to prevent scenarios like that.
And these are very good questions, and of course we will, I'm sure many questions are being already raised, how he was able to get a truck so easily, and maybe we'll have these answers even today. I want to thank you at this point for weighing in with your expertise. Nuriel, thank you very much. And we do now have the report with the timeline that is sketching out the different, very high-profile attacks that were conducted on French soil from Charlie Hebdo until now.
In recent years, France has become a target for terror attacks by world jihad organizations. January 7th, 2015, the shooting attack on Charlie Hebdo offices. Two brothers forced their way into the offices of the French satirical weekly newspaper in Paris. Armed with assault rifles and other weapons, they killed 12 people and injured 11 others in the building. An Al-Qaeda-affiliated group claimed responsibility for the attack. January 9th, 2015, the attack on Hyper Kasher, a single terrorist who pledged allegiance to the Islamic State, shot 4 people to death at the Jewish supermarket. The terrorist was connected to the attack on Charlie Hebdo and held shoppers in the supermarket hostage while demanding to free the terrorist from the Charlie Hebdo attack. French commandos stormed the store and killed him. November 13th, 2015, the single deadliest terrorist attack in French history. Targeted a music venue, a sports stadium, and several bars and restaurants. 90 people were killed during a siege on the music venue Bataclan, and the French president was evacuated from a football match between France and Germany at the Stade de France after 3 separate suicide bombings over the course of about 40 minutes. IS claimed responsibility for the attacks. June 13th, 2016, the Magnonville stabbing attack. A police officer and his wife, a police secretary, were stabbed to death in their home in Magnonville by a jihadist. IS claimed responsibility for the attack. July 14th, 2016, the Nice attack on Bastille Day. Terrorists used a truck to run over people who celebrated on the promenade.
And joining us now in studio are Sarah Feinberg, a research fellow at the INSS, and Ezra Taylor, correspondent monitoring social media this morning. Sarah, I do want to start with you. What do you make of this recent attack?
There are few. First of all, it's too early to really make any real conclusions, but there are few things that we can say based on this attack. First of all, is that we can observe the level of unpreparedness of France. And Christian Estrosi, the mayor of Nice, who is, by the way, a close friend of the State of Israel, sent a letter to the President François Hollande the day before the attack, saying that Nice wasn't sufficiently protected. And as we see, the level of preparedness was insufficient. The second thing that we can say based upon this attack is that a day before, one of the French jihadist leaders sent a Twitter saying to the French jihadists, you don't need to travel to Syria and Iraq anymore. You can take knives and cars and attack on the ground. So basically, this model of the returning jihadist is a model that slowly may disappear in France. And what we are seeing instead is an Islamization, a radicalization of petty criminalism.
Absolutely. Now, Sarah, as you speak, we're seeing live footage from Nice of the convoy of President Hollande and Prime Minister Valls, who made their way this morning from Paris to Nice to, of course, show their support and make a very strong statement. Now, as you mentioned, the regional president who sent a letter to Hollande just one day earlier saying they needed some type of emergency plan. Our Paris analyst earlier commented on this and said that Nice was, in fact, always asking for more and saying that we're not prepared. The people felt like no one was prepared. Authorities, what are they saying at this point?
So, first of all, they're saying they have the same discourse that this person was a suspect according to the French police, but he wasn't on the list of the suspicious people of the French internal services. This is a first element.
Although he had a criminal record, he wasn't being monitored at this time and not for a connection with terror.
Exactly, okay. Exactly. The second thing is that the French police were primarily prepared for the terrorist attacks for the Euro, and not for the July 14th attack, and maybe they neglected Nice. Although Nice is one of the main cities of the French jihadists, they put all their forces in the city of Paris, and maybe neglecting this city. And we know that the Alpes-Maritimes, the region in which Nice is located, is a region where you have 6.5% of the French jihadists, of the returning jihadists who live there. So there was a very high potential for terrorist attacks.
So while you mentioned no one has concluded yet, the investigation is ongoing, and we're not certain at this point if it is indeed an IS-led ideology that brought this attack, yet the French administration was immediate to blame the Islamic State for this.
Absolutely, because it does have all the symptoms of a typical Islamic State attack. Please remember that in September 2014, al-Adnadi, the speaker of the Islamic State, called the jihadists to attack through car ramming attacks and many, many other means. And it has all the signs of a typical ISIS attack on the French soil.
And sir, would you say that the other coastal resorts like Cannes are suffering the same sort of vulnerability? No one would imagine that such an attack could take place in their paradise.
Yeah, look, the real problem is that France has not really internalized, from a legal point of view, from an intelligence point of view, that it is currently at war. And what we're seeing is that they're just pushing the procrastinating the adoption of real decisions on the legal sphere, which is the most sensitive and painful decision, because it will mean to make compromise on the liberal democratic nature of the French Republic.
But they're not hesitating to make a state of emergency for months on end.
They're not hesitating to make a state of emergency, and by the way, they're prolonging the state of emergency for an additional 3 months this morning.
Exactly. They did for an additional 3 months this morning, but you're saying this is not really the legal scale. This is an immediate reaction, and there needs to be done a lot of changes of strategies, changes of thought in the place that hurts most, which is indeed legally. Have any changes been made, in fact, since the first terror attack?
There were many, many changes. The changes that were made were strengthening the presence of the French police in many places, strengthening the presence of the army. Just this morning, François Hollande called for the calling up of French reservists and for an additional 10,000 men guarding the main cities of France. In addition to that, many parties, including center-right and far-right parties, are calling for extraordinary measures. The first of them would be to put electronic bracelets to potential suspicious terrorists, a measure that wasn't accepted so far on the French soil. The second one is to do hearing in the French prisons, because most studies show that the French prisons are the center for radicalization, for Islamist radicalization in France. So these simple legal measures are encountering a lot of resistance from the liberal camp now.
And what do you have to say about the challenges of integration and assimilation, something that cannot only be blamed on those who are radicalized themselves? There's clearly a certain problem, or to call it a challenge, if you will, assimilating the Muslim communities. There's a large Muslim community. People would like to believe that a small percentage is indeed radicalized. Why are they not already a more accumulated part of society, a more mainstream part of French society?
The way we look at it, let's look at the numbers. The vast majority of French Muslims are, well, I wouldn't say integrated, but they're assimilated into French culture, into French language. What we're seeing is that we have a growing minority, a growing active minority of Salafists who are active on the French soil, and a growing pool of young, socially disenfranchised people who are sensitive to the jihadist narrative. Think about this. The best way to commit suicide by dying a hero is to perpetrate a major ISIS attack. So here you have the recipe for a long and difficult ISIS war in France.
The recipe that exists. Thank you very much. I want to thank you at this point for weighing in with your expertise. And I want to show our viewers once again the footage of the convoy of President Hollande and Prime Minister Valls, who are traveling in Nice. They're going through tunnels, and so we will be back with these pictures on the other side. Meanwhile, in studio, we're joined by Ezra Taylor, our social media expert, who can give us now the recent rundown of the hour. What do we have?
Well, at the moment online, the hashtag Pray for Nice is now currently trending around the world. In the UK, at least, when I was just having a look, lots of people standing in solidarity with France. What I'm seeing at the moment is lots of French flags, lots of people with deep emotions for this. We can see this image here, a poignant image which was spotted on Twitter by a user called Chloe Hall. And these images that are being shared around the world at the moment, these images that come across with such deep emotion, and we can see there, what came out on social media last night, people were really surprised and shocked by this, and of course it's just what's being said is the heartbreak online at the moment. Many people discussing this, many people with lots of French flags, that kind of thing. We can also have a look at what I talked about earlier, the Porte vers Nice. People around the world now genuinely surprised by this as well.
I believe that sooner or later, most of the government in Europe would understand it. They will take the right decisions, and then we will start a long process which slowly implement better security and better safety to the citizens, because they decide what comes first, human rights or the right to live. I belong to those who believe that at that stage, in this time of the world, the right to live is more important than the human rights. Most of us do not understand that we already gave up most.
Saying, prepare for the worst. How does a country deal with the situation being on edge as a counterterrorism expert? What do you think?
I think that the government of France has to decide, and it's a very simple decision, even though the implementation would take time. They need to decide of our privacy by Google, by our third generation cell phone, by our credit card, and so far and so on. We need to give up a little bit more just to make sure that we can provide more security and more safety to our people. This is a crucial issue.
We are joined back with Noriel, Brigadier General and expert on counterterrorism. Are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you.
Thank you very much, Noriel, for staying with us throughout this broadcast. We just spoke to our political analyst in Paris, Christian Mallard, who said that the administration